Kathy Cheng.
Now that I've matured and recognized what leadership means.
Your accolades in community involvement are literally a page and a half.
Dad just turned 50. I can tell you, he was a bad boy when he had me, right?
You're one of the most authentic people I know.
Well, I was definitely not in a leadership capacity because I was just la la la.
Did you also feel, were you getting those calls, hey, I'm buying these for our company?
I heard sobbing, or maybe I was sobbing. I don't know.
You can buy 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever that number might be.
It's a secret industry. I didn't even know that existed.
Right?
I didn't know it existed.
I love what you did as far as you took a huge stance saying, we're not for everyone.
Girl, Kathy had a lot of issues.
Oh, this is what this is all about.
My tank was empty. My tank was so empty.
You gave yourself permission to do something different too.
Money can't buy that feeling.
Welcome to the Sinclair podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Kathy Cheng, welcome. You're the president of WS&Co. You're president and founder of Redwood Classics Apparel. You're a leader in sustainable and ethical apparel, manufactured right here in Toronto, Canada.
Yes.
Amazing. Specialize in private label for some incredibly iconic global brands in retail.
Yes.
That we can't talk about. And in 2010, you created Redwood Classics Apparel, which is really made for retail and for a world I know very well, which is the branded merchandise space.
That is correct, sir.
Your accolades in community involvement are literally a page and a half. I'm going to highlight a couple. Advertising Specialty Institute Power 50 list, Bay Street Bull Magazine's Woman of the Year, Inc. Magazine's 100 Female Founders, LGBTQ plus Ambassador of the Year Award, and they go on and on and on. I literally have 2 pages. It's incredible. You're a wife, you're a mother of 2. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for, I think, 7, 8 years plus now. I think we hit it off really early,
Yeah.
so this is an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Serendipity.
Yes, exactly. Describing you, I'd say you're one of the most authentic people I know. You're beautiful inside and out.
Aww.
And you have this magnetic just aura about you. And people, anyone I ever ask, they just want to be around you. They want time with you. They love you. Incredible quality. I'm going to try and get you crying early in this.
Oh my goodness.
But let's get right into it, Kathy. I want you to take me to 1988. Your father founded WS&Co. How old were you? What were you doing? How did that impact your family?
So maybe before we talk about 1988, I'm going to go back all the way from when I first arrived in Canada at the age of 4. And my dad and my mom came. They were bad boys and girls when they had me. So they were pretty much teenagers when they had me. So they were still very young kids when they arrived in Canada. And we're your typical immigrant family that came with absolutely nothing. And he worked 3 jobs. He was a cutter by day. He delivered pizza at night and was a waiter at a local Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. Self-taught English. My mother was a full-time seamstress, and I'm an only child. So I used to go home with a key around my neck at the age of 5 and would stay home by myself until, so let's just say humble beginnings. Having said that, I think our family's always been entrepreneurial. My dad has always been entrepreneurial. Even when he was working, he would also moonlight and rent space from the factory that he was working at just to do contract cutting. And then before you know it, in 1988, the original company before we restructured into WS & Company was called Wing Sun Garments. So he started the small sewing contracting company with his brother and sister. Textiles is in our blood. I'm, second generation textiles in Canada, but my grandfather, my parents actually met at a factory back in Hong Kong.
That's incredible.
So there's definitely a lot of legacy family and textiles in our blood. They started this small sewing contracting company with 5 people and 10 machines in 1988. And next thing you know, we started making for a very iconic, was once Canadian, is no longer Canadian owned, but that was one of the first brands. And then we started to do private label for another iconic Canadian brand that is still headquartered in Canada, but is definitely a global brand as well, a publicly traded company now as well. And that's kind of how it all began. And we went from 5 people and 10 machines to the late 90s, and we were directly employing close to 500 people. And, we went from just sewing to sewing and cutting, embroidery, screen printing, dye house, warehouse. At one point, we're very loyal. As I think you know that a little bit about me there.
Absolutely.
And one of the first knitting mill that gave our factory credit terms, they were retiring out in Quebec, and so we bought them and we moved them to Toronto, and that's why we were as vertical as one could be, and we had close to 200,000 square feet, and all of this was always done locally.
That's incredible.
In Scarborough.
How old were you when you started going to the factory, getting your hands dirty, whether it's on a broom or on a machine? Tell me more about that.
I have to tell you my age if
I didn't ask you that on purpose.
It's okay. I was in my early teens. I was in my tweens, and I still remember helping out at the factory. And I shared the story of how humbling my upbringing has been. I've been very independent my entire life, and I realize now as we revisit, my past, I realized there was a lot of skill sets and tools I learned without realizing I was learning because my parents were always working. My dad spoke English, but again, self-taught. He was always working. My mother, she didn't really speak English. So I remember as we built the factory and we started doing better, it was me. I'm the one who's calling hydro. I'm calling cable. A 12-year-old doesn't do this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Crazy experience.
So I realized I've gained a lot of experience and skills along the way without realizing I was. So I remember helping out with payroll, doing numbers, and I don't know what I was doing, but I tried and I figured it out. And I feel like, when you told me when you asked me to speak and some of the questions you asked, I was doing a lot of reflecting, and I realized that's the story of my life. You just figure it out.
Yeah.
We just figure it out.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
What would be one of the one or two most impactful things? So you're young. You're in the factory at a young age. You're very fiercely independent, not by choice perhaps, but just because you've got to take care of yourself. Your parents are working. It's probably endless hours at that point. What were a couple of the lessons that you learned along the way, or what are some of the one or two memories from that time that something that you took with you that's really been super helpful in your career today?
One or two things. Definitely hard work. I've learned by witnessing just the growth and the family business and everyone else around us, the importance of hard work, because often as entrepreneurs, it's asked, is it luck or is it hard work? I think it's a combination. And you need to have the hard work to be prepared when that luck arrives to be able to welcome it.
It's beautiful.
So I think the hard work is definitely there, but also a sense of community. Community can take shape and form in many ways. And we often think it's the people around us, and it absolutely is. But when I think about the growth of our business and I was born in Hong Kong, and I don't want to get too geopolitical, but in 1997, China took back Hong Kong from the British colony. There was a huge influx of immigrants that came, and years ago, Hong Kong was once a textile hub. Again, that's where my parents met. They were actually manufacturing there. So I think back in how fortunate we were because we were able to onboard a number of new immigrant families. And I think back about how beautiful Toronto has developed into, what a diverse city we are, and how we've changed, I've just watched it flourish and grow and welcome what I believe makes Canada, Canada, which is the diversity. and the immigration. And if you break it down to business dollars and cents, that's really what it is. You look at the government right now, that's what we're doing, right? Realizing that we need immigration. We need to bring in new skill set. And you know what? In every society and every economy, we're going to have different pockets of skill sets and talent that we need. And we can't just be service-based. Not everything can just be tech, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me more about some of the, when you talk about those, the inclusion and the family and what you learned growing up as far as you saw when you say we and you say the family that your company built, or sorry, your family built within the company, how does that affect your hiring practices today?
Oh, I think the hiring practices is about recognizing, well, when I was going with the 1997 and onboarding a number of immigrant families, I now reflect back and realize it was really challenging for new immigrants to come into a brand new country, different culture, different language, and be able to integrate with society and be a productive member. Not because of the lack of desire, more so it can be challenging because you're not always accepted. And so what I realized when I reflect during that peak time of when we were growing was we had this business that was welcoming newcomers, and there was a little bit of a stepping stone of home that felt like home, right? You come to Canada, you come to our factory, and we're of Asian descent. A number of our makers of our Asian descent. You go in and it's I didn't realize, now we're intentional about building safe spaces, right?
Yeah.
But back then I think we were just doing it without realizing it. And there's been a number of, and I remember sometimes often it was really challenging for these new immigrants to have a job because they were speaking with an accent, or maybe their English was broken, or maybe English wasn't a language that they could even communicate in. And then it's hard to get a Canadian job because you don't have Canadian experience. Yeah. You don't have North American experience. So we became a stepping stone. And that's what I've reflected on and realized. And I guess after I restructured with my dad on the business and where we are today, that's why we've been very open to hiring international students. There's a lot of students that come here and they're looking for a better life. They come to get educated, but they also want to stay. And so how do we help them? And how do, in between they have a work permit, and usually it's anywhere between 1 to 2 years. Not a lot of businesses will invest in that.
No.
Because 1 or 2 years and then you're done, right? There's a huge risk. But I think what we realize is this is the opportunity. And this is one of the reasons why we insist on making everything in Canada. We've been doing this, we've been making on Canadian soil for over 35 years. And, I often say it's because this country has given our family so much. And I want to be able to continue to have this platform and give back to those that may be not as fortunate as we are.
Wow. It's beautiful. Let's go to 2010. Mm-hmm. So actually, no, I want to go back to 2008, 2009. So a couple things are going on. You've gone through as a family, WTO opens up. So 2001,
WTO opens up.
China becomes now, a massive exporter of apparel, textiles, hard goods, everything, which changes the landscape for probably the business and a lot of similar businesses in Canada.
100%. Like the textile industry basically was already, we started to see the writing on the wall when we knew WTO was happening. But I would say by 2008, 2009, that's, that was when the global recession was happening. And, making textiles in Canada was the least attractive business that any institution would be attracted to.
For sure.
And, and it was during a time where I think a lot of financial institutions were risk adverse. And so it was really challenging. We were by that time down to 100, 150 people. We had, scaled back a lot because truthfully, the business landscape was just not able to support the infrastructure that we had scaled and grown to. And so come 2008, at the end of 2008, we had to make a business decision as well as a family decision. Do we continue producing in Canada and fight this battle of offshore production and fast fashion? Really? That's the battle? That's what we're battling, because we're a complete opposite of that, right? Or do we just retire like most textile families have in North America? And get
successful
into a whole new
journey, employed a lot of people, probably earned a great living along the way, but then you hit this pivotal point.
Yeah. And
what's your role at the company at this point?
At this point, I was I was business development. I was helping out. I was kind of helping out. I was not in an ownership capacity.
But you're in on everything with your father and the senior, or?
I was in, but not. I don't know how to describe it. Because the company was started with my aunt, my uncle, my brother, my dad's brother and sister as well. And by early 2000, they pretty much retired from the business. Okay. So it was just my dad. So my dad and himself, and I was kind of helping out, but I would say I don't believe I was in a leadership capacity, nor did I show I wanted to be in a leadership capacity. Now that I've matured and recognized what leadership means.
But you probably were in your own way.
Maybe.
I'm sure you were.
I'm not sure, but I remember he called me. And 2008 was a very pivotal year. I just got married, financial recession, just bought a house, my husband and I. My dad just turned 50. I can tell you, he was a bad boy when he had me, right? And then this decision came up at the end of the year, and he called me actually a few days before my honeymoon.
Wow.
And
you remember exactly the moment where you were. I remember
he called me, and I was kind of like, I had no idea what was going on. And that's why I say I was definitely not in a leadership capacity, because I was just la, la, la.
Like, were you always going to stay there? Like, was it a path sort of like, were you...
No, because
did you see yourself doing other things, and had you started to look at that point of what else might be out there for me?
I did. How I even ended up working with him was after I had graduated. I really have a passion for events, and I've always wanted to do trade shows and just like the chaos, managing chaos. I didn't realize that, but I ended up doing a post-grad program and then landed an opportunity to run Canadian Education Expo conference in Taiwan. So I lived in Taiwan for about a year, and then I came back to Toronto because I really missed home. And from there, I was looking for the perfect job, doing events, and of course I didn't. I ended up working for a consulting company called Wood International, and I ended up running their institutional fixed income studies, institutional equity study, Canadian equity studies. I was working so much. And I still remember I was making good money, but when you're servicing the FIs, it's not always the easiest. Sure. And I remember my dad one day came to me and he said, and we were about, close to 500 people at this time, right? So he said, this is great, but have you ever considered, if you're working this hard, to work for your family business? And that's when I went, oh. Okay, and then I started working with him, and that was in, I think, the year 2000. Wow. So by 2008, I was still like, la, la, la. I guess I wasn't sure what I was doing. But when this decision happened, like, he asked me to go to this meeting, and I was like, oh, with who? And I realized, okay, something's up. My husband and I ended up not going on our honeymoon.
No way.
No, we didn't go. But we were supposed to go with one of my best friends as a couple, and then my cousin and her then husband so it's the six of us. So they went on our honeymoon.
Oh, good. Yeah. I hope you got to go after at some point.
We did. You did the trip. We did.
Okay,
we did a trip. My dad gifted us with a huge trip for our 10-year anniversary. But
awesome.
Yeah, it was, so we missed that. And I went to this meeting, and I was like, oh, okay. And
that's
then
what this
afterwards, he asked me, some time went by, a couple of weeks here and there, and things had to go the way they were playing out. And then he asked me, would I like to do this all over again with him? And I was like, ugh. Because, look, transparently, there was a part of me that felt like, oh, I finally had an opportunity to just kind of do my own thing. Because the other thing I think I learned through watching our family business was loyalty and that sense of community and recognizing you got to give back. And so in hindsight now, I think back, and maybe that's why I stayed. And when my dad asked me to be his business partner, I don't think I wanted to.
I was going to say, did you feel pressure? Like, was there a sense of obligation or?
Not at first. I felt the sense of obligation, but I also felt like I had been involved and spent some time there already, that this was an opportunity to start fresh. So that's where I was, really struggling with starting fresh, or I am starting fresh to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going to restructure. I recall him, actually, no, I recall after he asked me, there's this moment, I call it my aha moment, because I go back to the factory amongst the humming of machines. I don't know if it's in my mind or the word got out that we may not be around anymore. And I just felt this sense of emotion on the production floor. And I don't know if it's in my mind I heard sobbing or maybe I was sobbing. I don't know. But I call it this aha moment where it hit me like a ton of brick. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. Because I realized that I would not have the education that I've had. I wouldn't have the life that I have. I wouldn't have all these privileges if it wasn't for our family of makers.
It's incredible.
And so, I was like, I'm going to do this. We're going to do this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you never looked back.
And and then January 2009, we humbly restructured with 40 people, 40. We moved into one of the facilities that we had moved out to when we were scaling. The broken tile in one of the washrooms was still broken when we moved back in. And
good sense of home.
It was just, and then we just bootstrapped and started up all over again. And I was your reception. This was during the time where it's like, you call in and press 1 for this, press 2. And I just thought, wow, business has become so dehumanized, so desensitized. I was like, where's the sense of community? That I made sure every phone call I was picking up myself. I picked up every phone call.
Love that.
Which was amazing in hindsight because it helped me realize there's a market opportunity. I started to get people calling in. They would say, and at this time, the factory didn't have a brand. We weren't Redwood Classics. We didn't have a brand because some of the global brands, they don't want to feel threatened with a private label factory that actually has their own brand. So I still recall, people would call in, they say, oh, I looked up your CA number, which is like an RN number, your manufacturer identification number. We didn't have labels. It just had, what is required.
They could still track you, though.
And they tracked us down. And people would track us down, and they say, I looked up your CA number, 1924, and this is the number it gave me. I bought the sweatshirt 10 years ago. I watched it 1 million times. I want to get more. And it's made in Canada. The quality's incredible. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, you called the right company. And we have a stock program, but we don't sell one. You have to buy, you have to buy 36, right? And they're like, I don't need 36.
Yeah, exactly. Did you also feel, were you getting those calls, hey, I'm buying these for our company, and we want to get it? It was
these
just
were individuals.
the individual
these were
people.
one.
What was the moment where you said, here's the market for this branded merch space? The corporations that, can buy 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever that number might be.
It's a secret industry. I didn't even know that existed.
Right?
I didn't know it existed.
Yes, it is. Nobody does until they get in, and they're like, oh, this is what this is all about.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed. So I just, based on these one-off calls, I was like, okay, well, we have this brand called Redwood Classics. And then we just started to come to market. And I remember we actually launched the brand in the promo industry. And I think Wally Richards, who is a mentor of mine, and he's in our industry, he had known our family for a number of years. And I kind of knew what he did, but kind of didn't. I just knew he sold hats. I didn't know to what channel, to Marga. I don't know. I'm just like, I make clothes, right? Yeah. He's just a hat guy.
I make shirts, you make hats.
Yeah, and I remember he was like, well, have you heard of this organization called PPPC, Promotional Product, And I was like, know. And he goes, well, we're having this big trade show. Why don't you come on down? Well, I couldn't come on down because it's such a secret industry. It was a little bit of an adventure for me to even go down to the show. I was walked around. I was not allowed to walk on my own. I was walked around by staff. Again, it was like the secret industry, right?
Strange.
Like I'm looking through a window kind of thing. And then I discovered, I went, oh, well, I can sell this in bulk. And that was it. And so we launched the brand in the industry, in the branded merchandise industry. And because I also, when I walked the show, realized people were like, this is quality. This is such great quality. And I'd touch and feel it and I'd be like, that's not quality. That's like outlet quality, you know? Or these retail brands that would say like, oh, buy XYZ retail brand and put your logo on it. And I noticed that people were like, consumers were expecting, or corporations were expecting it to be the same level of quality as what you would find in the stores. And that's not the truth.
It was made specially for
the industry. It was
industry.
made specially for this channel, which has a number of layers. And therefore, you know, like you're taking away something in order to hit price points. And so I just thought there was a niche for us. And truth is, everything was made offshore. This was in the height of fast fashion. It was what can you get the cheapest?
For sure.
What can you get the quickest? And what was the new? And it was just about overconsumption, where that's not what we wanted. And I felt like our brand represented everything opposite. We were slow fashion. People ask me what my, our value is. It's always quality, quick to market, and how flexible we are with low minimums. And we're doing it all in Canada. Right? So there's this, just think about green hat. Like when you think about just the transportation, everything, I think often when people think about sustainability, they're like, oh, is it organic? Is it this? Is it that? Actually, it's really the processing of it. It's really, where are you making it? All of those things matter. Let's look at the operational side of sustainability as opposed to just, oh, because the yarn is organic. Sorry, I went on a bit of a
This is
tangent.
good. Okay, so there's a couple things I want to touch base on, and let's park that one as far as I want to talk about corporations and what they're actually doing versus what they say they want to do and what they think they should do. So, but before that, I love what you did as far as you took a huge stance saying, we're not for everyone. And I think in most businesses, and I look back at our business early on, is that we were everything to everyone because we had to. We would take any sale, any order. It didn't matter. And as the business has evolved and matured, is we've been able to say, okay, this is our demographic. This is the target market. This is the clientele that if we want to scale and grow and that appreciate what we're doing. Yeah. But I think you've done that so incredibly well. And just this beautiful saying of we're not for everyone. We're niche. You almost disqualify people and they're like, you can't do that. Yeah. I'm the buyer. But I just think it's a fantastic lesson for anyone in business to pick a niche. And multiple times in conversations with you or with our team or just hearing you speak.
I do say, sorry, we're not for
everybody.
everybody.
We're not for everyone.
Don't pitch me to all your clients.
Exactly, yeah. I'm probably for a handful. And even just there's certain people that get it in the industry, and from a sales channel, the sales individuals or corporations that get it do extremely well. And those that don't understand or don't want to invest the time, don't. What was it for you? Like, did you always have that, or when did you take that stance just to and it's a number of things, even on your website on returns from individuals. Oh, I love it. It's like, we don't take returns because it's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
So tell me, it's a two-part question, but tell me, like, when did you really like hold your ground on that and say, I know this is just what needs to happen and I'm not going to try and be everything to everyone?
I think from the beginning. From day one entering the promo industry, because I was like, nobody is making it in Canada. I remember going on my first trade show. We go across Canada. And my first show, I was an exit. People didn't understand what we did. I had samples. People would touch it, and I'd give them a lookbook, and I'd say everything's made in Canada, and they looked at me like I was an alien with three heads. They're like, huh? I'm like, it says Redwood Classics made in Canada. Like, we've incorporated made in Canada in everything we do in the messaging.
And it's not double the price.
And it's not double the price.
Accessible, and it's beautiful, and in high quality.
Thank you. I just felt like there was a niche in the marketplace, and, it really was picking up those phone calls and and saying, because who knew who those individuals were? Maybe it was a president, maybe it was a CEO. These are decision makers, but ultimately, this is a consumer good. Even branded merchandises, right? It's a consumer good. So why are we not trying to best service the end person who is wearing or using that product?
And the same in retail too.
Yeah, same in retail.
Your customer
right?
is really the one that's wearing that garment.
Yeah. So we focus on, I call it the Redwood Classics experience. And sometimes it's not great because, and that's how I also learned, how to make things better, was because I thought back about the individual that went and looked up our CA number and then called us to try to buy one. That's not a good customer journey. They may have it once they have the product in their hand and they're wearing it. But, so these are little lessons that I learned along the way and a lot of mistakes I made. But, in hindsight, were these mistakes good mistakes? I guess so, because it allowed us, and we were firm on our belief and why we existed. Making in Canada is something that was really important to us. Focusing on quality was important to us because that's how we grew as a business to begin with. The legacy of the factory has always been high-end goods, high-end quality, and always focus on the quality.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
Let's talk about diverse spend. So from corporations, and not just in the brand and merchandise space, in general, from a procurement lens. You've sat on lots of conferences, boards, you've spoke, across the country and even internationally, and in front of some of the largest corporations. How are you educating them? How are they reacting? And how many are just, doing it because they think they have to, or actually giving a shit and putting their money where their mouth is?
I think it's an evolution. I do believe corporations are. However, it's still very much infancy. Like, that's really, we're talking about supplier diversity as an example, right? Supplier diversity is really opening up opportunities. And just because you're diverse certified doesn't mean you get the business. It's taking in consideration that there's a number of entrepreneurs or businesses that typically are marginalized. They're not, first generation, they're second, third generation Canadians that perhaps have that network, have the community to be able to welcome you into opportunities for procurement. And so when you get diverse certified, there's an opportunity for us to actually present and be part of the procurement process. And that's really all it is. We still have to have the best product. We still have to have the best service. We still have to have the best pricing. But all it is now an opportunity for us to be at the table. And I don't think that's too much to ask for.
No, it's an invitation.
It's an invitation. I often say, getting diverse certified is an invitation to a party. Okay? You go to that party, Chris, and you and I have been to a couple of parties.
We've partied a couple of times,
Yeah,
yes.
a couple of times. And if we just sat in the corner, we wouldn't have had fun.
Yeah.
Right? But no, we had fun.
Yes, exactly.
We had fun.
So it's the industry just being, or in general, it's being a good host to make sure that everyone gets that opportunity to get there.
Absolutely.
I think it's really well put. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's one superpower? What's your, I'm going to call it like a gift. It's not just a talent, but what's your superpower that you've discovered over the years that makes you you?
This is, I think you know the answer.
Of course I do.
I'd like to think that I am just me. I say it as it is. Like I said, don't present us to every client. I guess the word would be authentic, but I think I am just me. I'm a human being. And in hindsight, I think there's been a number of situations where I was either too ignorant or too just focused on being true to my brand, being true to our business, being true to our family values, being true to my own values, that I didn't realize that's called authenticity.
Yeah. And that's why I said at the start, I wholeheartedly agree. That is you to a T, and I think it's beautiful because, I mean, I could speak personally from my journey early on and getting into business. I was trying to be something that I wasn't when I was out at functions or in meetings, and early on there was that lack of authenticity because I just didn't know. I thought I had to show up as someone different, and over the years, the more I could actually just be me and realize I don't have to come up with anything else. It's really easy to just show up as yourself. Not to take away from the fact that it is hard sometimes because people are trying to be something, or they think they need to be something
we think
else.
we do.
Yeah.
And I'm still going through that journey, because there are sometimes I'm in rooms that I don't feel fully comfortable, and I feel like, well, it's intimidating. Should I be a certain way? Or, you know, you mentioned I do go on stage and I do speak every single time. I'm like so nervous, but it's also what I've learned. You know, I've realized, and after a lot of self-reflection, is when I'm in a space where I don't feel comfortable, it actually comes out physically. It manifests physically, where I won't feel well, or I actually like shake. I can't speak. And so those have been little lessons that I'm learning along the way to, I guess you could say that's my radar. And not recognizing that was my radar. So through being just me, I'm now getting to know myself even more. And I think, just that's my superpower, I guess. Yeah. I think, you know, I'm going through therapy, and one of the things I'm learning is if you can recognize your emotion and then put logic and understand why you're reacting that way, it gives you the permission to be yourself. Yeah.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. Let's talk about advice you would give Kathy 10 years ago. What would you go back and if you could sit with, you know, it would be, you know, 19-year-old Kathy 10 years ago. That what would you share? What would you say?
19-year-old Kathy had a lot of issues.
No, I mean, well, let's say 10 years ago.
I would say be kinder to myself, be kinder to yourself. Experience is a collection of mistakes. It really is. And, you know, now we read books and, you know, thought leaders, and we celebrate these mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes. But I don't think that's always been the case, and especially in business environments. You know, I'm going to add another complexity and layer to it, where there's the cultural. You know, the cultural upbringing that I've had is I need to be proper. You have to have your manners, you know, watch what you're saying. And over the last few years, I've also, I don't know, maybe it's age, I'm getting older. I want to learn more about where I came from. And I've been digging into, you know, the British influence and the history of that, and recognizing, oh my goodness, there's so much influence in Hong Kong. As, you know, Hong Kong is part of China now, but in itself is a very special culture that is a mix and a dichotomy of British culture as well as traditional Chinese culture, you know, and it shows up in food. There's, you know, Hong Kong Cafe, you have this mix of tea and coffee, right? It's so fascinating, and I realized that actually shows up in me, and that's how I've been showing up with this blend. But that's also, you know, there's baggage along with that, which is what are the expectations of me? So I would say, going back to your, you know, what would I tell myself? Be kind to myself and allow myself to recognize that it's okay that you're neither this or this. Because growing up in a household that's very traditional, Chinese, culturally, food, expectations, mannerism, rules, and then going to school and being around my North American, you know, that have been born here, and they can go out and play and just all these things. It was completely opposite. And I think I spent years, and I'm probably still going through it, and finding comfort in space and recognizing I am who I am, and recognize that it's actually a privilege to have both cultures in me and to be able to switch and understand, because it gives me a better perspective. And I hope with bigger and wider perspectives, you know, I will have less blind spots, because everyone's got blind spots.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's one belief system that was given to you that you've changed generationally for your kids? So what's something that you were, maybe a couple things, because there's probably a few.
That's a really good question. Definitely
And maybe I can lead
encourage.
with, you know, we do this, or we don't believe in that. I mean, all of us have these things and stories that our parents told us that cause us to look at the world a certain way. And I've got a long list of my own that, you know, I've challenged or need to challenge, but what might be one for you?
We are hopefully breaking the generational, like, affection. I'm very affectionate with my husband. I'm very affectionate with our kids.
You're a hugger. I love that.
Yeah, I'm very affectionate with my kids. I feel like I didn't have a lot of that, and I don't know if it's as a result of the lack of time and just physically they couldn't be with me, or it's also, you know, it's stern and, you know, you're not supposed to be this way, or just little things like I remember growing up, this one time I had a beer, and my dad said, "You're a girl. You don't drink a beer out of a bottle." Right? Things like that. No.
What?
My daughter she is dynamic, and I support her and encourage her to be her. I still remember this one International Women's Day. It was so special to me. My kids were, I think my son was like 5 or 6 at the time, and my daughter was 7.5, International Women's Day. And I was like, it's International Women's Day. And I remember we were having breakfast just before I was heading off to work, and my son said, "Mommy, what's International Women's Day?" And I explained, you know, we're celebrating. And he said, "I don't understand, but whatever boys can do, girls can do." So I think that
Isn't that amazing?
that is something that we've made a point of really breaking that mold of the traditional, what society expects the roles to be between genders. You know, things like just being more open to recognizing not just gender, but religion and color of skin. All of that is different. And I don't blame generations before, because you don't know what you don't know. And they've also have their journey and their stories that they've had to go through to have formulated, you know, their thought process and their perspective of things and opinions. So I try to be, I'm far from perfect. I am certain I have blind spots. I am certain I am biased.
But is perfection even a thing that you would ever want, or that exists?
Oh, maybe that should be the advice. Don't be a perfectionist.
Stop
Don't try
trying to be.
a
Yeah,
perfectionist.
stop it.
I think I did
Stop
try
it,
to do
good
that
Kathy.
too. Maybe that's a nicer way. That would be the more direct way to give advice, is don't try to be a perfectionist, that I feel like I've tried for a long time. And then the kinder way advice I'd give myself is, you know, be kind to yourself.
Perfectly imperfect. That's what I say.
Imperfect.
That's what I say.
I love that.
What's one piece of advice you'd give a new entrepreneur or someone that's starting out? I mean, you remember, through your family, you got to see it through the lens, and the business ups and downs, and especially those first 5 years in starting a business can be absolutely grueling and deflating and challenging. What's a piece of advice you'd give someone that's thinking about going on, or maybe in some of those hard times early on?
Surround yourself with people that are better than you, smarter than you, and much more capable than you, and allow them to flourish and let them shine.
Amazing advice.
Yeah.
So true.
It's very true. Yeah. And foster that. I think part of it is also, as I had shared, when you recognize untapped talent and hidden potential in individuals, and you watch them excel and grow. I've lost people. And I think early on, maybe years ago, I'd be like, oh, that person left us. And I'd be sad. And I'd be, let's be honest, there's probably a little bit of, what did I do wrong?
Sure,
Or
was it me?
was it me? Was it them? Like what? But now I've realized, no, it's great because this is what we want. We want them to grow. We want them to be better. And that feeling, the more it happened, the more I realized, like, money can't buy that feeling. Money cannot buy the joy when you see the potential and watch that individual work so hard and is flourishing. That is a journey that we will have a privilege to be part of. And there's not enough money that can buy you that ticket.
Yeah. It's almost like our obligation is to level people up and
100%.
grow your team around you, that they can go flourish eventually. And I mean, the days of sticking around for the long haul just aren't there anymore. And
Yeah. And I think it's also recognizing that that's part of your journey in finding your voice. Like, truthfully, I never saw myself as a leader. I didn't even feel comfortable with my own voice. And it's a little bit sad, but it wasn't until others started to recognize you're talking about these. I'm very honored, don't get me wrong, but to me that it's not it was those awards that then started to get me go, oh, maybe I do deserve to be heard. Oh, maybe I do have something to say. I think confidence is also really important. So another, I don't want to say advice, but I would, because I did lack it, and I'm probably still working on this confidence issue for many years, is to be confident in yourself and believe in yourself. Because I didn't for a long time. And once I realized others were believing in me, and then I started to like get some wins, and I allowed myself to celebrate these wins and to celebrate me and to allow myself to say I deserve it and give myself a pat on the back, that I start finding my voice. And that's why, a little plug-in, our Women of the Week. I love our Women of the Week campaign that we developed, 3 years ago. And really, it's every Wednesday we're featuring a female voice, regardless of capacity. Doesn't matter if you're an intern or you're a CEO. We've had like Global 500 CEOs featured, to an executive assistant. And it's okay, because everyone has a voice. And I think if we're able to share our platform to allow more voices to be heard, I hope that's where we could either influence them to have that vote of confidence and saying, yeah, I am worthy to be heard.
And everyone's got a great story.
Everyone has a story. You have a story. We should be interviewing you.
No, that's next. No, maybe at a later date.
We should totally be interviewing you.
Tell me, Kathy. No, this is about you. What's next for you? And when I say what's next, it's something that's this year or something big that you've been thinking about that you are either hesitant to pull the trigger on. Like, what's your next big, crazy idea? Big, audacious goal. I don't care what you want to call it. What's next for you?
My big, audacious
you're not done.
goal. No, I'm not.
In a lot of ways, you're probably just getting started.
I hope.
You are. If you could see what everyone else got to see, that lens, and I think I can speak for myself and the struggle with confidence and imposter syndrome and all of those things that, there's a little human in us maybe saying, yeah, are you sure? Yeah. If you could see what others could see.
Thank you. I would love to be able to continue using our platform, our business, to share and continue to build our community, recognize and really provide space for a diverse community to be together and influence and continue to make space for all of us. And what does that mean in like goal-oriented? I know, big, audacious goals, right?
Yes. Put that on a board somewhere.
I don't have a board. And truthfully, it's because, COVID was hard. COVID was really hard. Business was great, but COVID was hard on me, and I don't think I realized it until we were starting to get out of it. And I mean, I'm still in therapy. During when I often say you can't support local manufacturing only when it's convenient for us. And that's what we do. And that's what we did. But during COVID, my business meant something. We were a domestic supply chain, and we were able to make medical grade gowns. We were able to donate and make masks and give back and donate it to needy communities, from Indigenous communities to healthcare centers to nonprofits. That was amazing. It was amazing. And, you know, we did a lot of giving and taking care of the community and taking care of our staff and making sure that they were safe, right? And then at the same time, you know, taking care of our brand partners that needed supply, and they needed, and they were demanding. And it was, and making sure that I still saw my family. I spent more time at the factory during COVID than I've ever had. And I realized that I think I missed a lot of key moments with my kids that they also missed because of COVID. So I would say after COVID, and that's another reason why I said be kind to yourself, because I wasn't kind to myself. I think I was kind to everyone else. You know, the whole thing about the airplane and taking your own mask, and I just did not bring my mask. My tank was empty. My tank was so empty. So when you ask me what the next thing is, I'm not sure, because I strategically, and I said to myself about a year and a half ago, last year was going to be about me. Amazing. And I shared that with my team, and I just managed expectations, and I said, hey, in business, we're always supposed to be scaling and growing and growing and growing. When do we ever celebrate base camp? Yeah. Is it normal? Is it healthy for an entrepreneur or a leader to constantly be going at this rate? It wasn't for me. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it didn't work for me. And I'm really glad I celebrated base camp. Yeah. Because I'm really excited for the future right now. And I think I fell in love. I know. When I reflect, when I had the chance last year to just allow myself to reflect and think, I fell in love with my business all over again.
Wow. That's incredible. You gave yourself permission to do something different too, which is beautiful.
I did.
Kathy, thank you so much. We could go on for hours and hours. I appreciate you more than you know.
Oh,
you're a wonderful human. I love you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.